Despite the overwhelming popularity in the bodybuilding community and the general fitness community, high volume training is absolutely not the best and most effective approach for improving muscular size and strength. Now, this is very controversial in the fitness community, which is largely driven by folklore and tradition with a plethora of other logical, critical thinking fallacies. But in today's video, I'm going to prove that high volume training is not the best approach for muscle growth, and I'm going to prove it with evidence instead of tradition, folklore, and what most of the bodybuilding and fitness community uses as justification and evidence for high volume training. What's up, guys? Jay Vincent here. In today's video, we're debunking high volume training. And by debunking, I'm not saying high volume training that a lot of people use doesn't work. I'm debunking the fact that it's not the best. Now, over the last 50 years of bodybuilding, the majority of prolific, successful bodybuilders used a high volume training approach. Now, what exactly do we mean by high volume? Most bodybuilders and the fitness community in general define high volume by lots of sets, lots of reps, and lots of time and days spent in the gym. And over the last 50 years, this was the most popular approach to bodybuilding and still used today by most prolific bodybuilders. But there were a couple extremely successful bodybuilders that went against the grain of this popularity by using a lower volume, lower frequency, high intensity training approach and found a huge amount of success doing this. Bodybuilders like, of course, Mike Mentzer, Dorian Yates, Casey Viator, Sergio Oliva, Boyer Coe, all prolific, very successful bodybuilders that didn't use this extremely high volume approach similar to Arnold Schwarzenegger used and many of the modern bodybuilders today. So why do so many gym goers, bodybuilders, and just fitness enthusiasts use this approach with so many days in the gym, so many sets, so many reps, multiple exercises per muscle group under the belief that it's going to result in the best physique? Well, it comes down to something called the bandwagon fallacy. This is a logical fallacy that's very common in society today. And basically it means that a lot of people just kind of do what they see other people doing, not really knowing whether or not it's the best or the most effective, basically because it's the most popular. You see this a lot of times when it comes to technology. Now, most people today probably use the iPhone, even though there are many other cell phones out there that are probably better technology, better cameras, faster, more storage, cheaper. A lot of people are going to opt for the iPhone because they just kind of see a lot of other people using the iPhone, despite the fact it's probably not the best option. This is a good example of the bandwagon fallacy, and this is kind of how a lot of people go on their training journey. They see whatever everyone else is using and they just kind of copy and replicate it without looking further into it on whether or not it's actually the best, the most effective, and of course the most time efficient. This is why you see so many people in the gym doing these super high volume workouts. It's just the bandwagon fallacy at play. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, well, the high volume training worked for this bodybuilder and this fitness influencer, so it must work. Well, I'm not saying it doesn't work. What I'm saying is it's not necessarily the most effective, and it's certainly not the most efficient. Because although this may have worked for many fitness influencers and many bodybuilders, it also has not worked for millions and millions and millions of other individuals. We can refer to this as the invisible graveyard. Now, the thing is, we see all the people who use these approaches and succeeded from it, but what we don't see is the vast majority of individuals who saw no success or negative results from training this way. And most of the people who follow my channel and kind of get into high intensity training kind of fall into this category. You've tried CrossFit, volume training, powerlifting, all these more traditional approaches and didn't see very good success, which leads you down the road to high intensity training. And the vast majority of you who try high intensity training and did not see success with these high volume workouts or other training protocols finally see muscle growth and improvements in strength with high intensity training. And this is because high intensity training actually focuses on the correct physiology of muscle growth. And I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove that high intensity training focuses on the actual physiology of muscle growth, whereas high volume training does not. And it's mostly rooted in tradition and folklore. Now, there was a paper published in April of 2022, a review paper reviewing the mechanisms of muscle growth. It's titled An Evidence-Based Narrative Review of Mechanisms of Resistance Exercise-Induced Human Skeletal Muscle Hypertrophy. And what this paper looked to do was review all the current literature and find what are the actual mechanisms of muscle growth. Is it metabolic stress? Is it muscle damage? Is it changes in hormones such as growth hormone and testosterone? What is it about the training that really makes your muscle grow? Now, some of the beliefs when it came to volume training was that the muscle damage associated with lifting and lowering the weight and the microtrauma and the small tears in your contractile tissues, this is what stimulated the muscle growth. But based on this narrative review paper, they actually found that muscle damage was not a good contributor to muscle growth. They found very little evidence that the actual microtrauma damage associated with lifting and lowering the weights contributed significantly to the muscle growth process. And this was a huge case for doing lots of sets, lots of reps, and lots of frequency to promote this damage and this trauma and stimulate the most amount of muscle growth. So this was one of the ideas that actually supported higher volume training. But based on the vast majority of literature when it comes to the mechanisms of muscle growth, it doesn't hold up. Another reason why higher volume training simply makes no sense, because one of the things that supported a higher volume approach actually has been shown to not contribute much to hypertrophy at all. Another mechanism that was previously believed to contribute to muscle growth was metabolic stress. Now, this would support a higher volume approach because more exercises, more sets, more reps, of course, contribute to more metabolic stress. The more we use our muscles with more exercises and more workouts, the more we use anaerobic and aerobic respiration to produce ATP to cause those muscle contractions, and the more metabolic waste products we produce in that process, thereby more metabolic stress. So it was previously believed that this metabolic stress contributed to muscle growth, but again, this narrative review paper found that it really doesn't. So another thing which previously supported higher volume workouts doesn't hold up again. So the primary reasons to do more sets, more reps, more workouts, more exercises was for more metabolic stress, more muscle damage, and the previous belief was those two things contributed to more muscle growth. But based on the current evidence and the current literature, they do not. So it doesn't seem that there really is any justifiable reason to do a higher volume approach when you look at the one thing they found that really does stimulate muscle growth, and that is known as mechanotransduction, or more commonly referred to as mechanical tension. So basically what's happening here is when you contract your muscles hard, there are mechanosensors on the outside of your muscle cell called costomeres. And when these mechanosensors are stimulated, they turn on the mTOR pathway, which more or less tells the nucleus in your muscle cell to grow new contractile tissue in the form of myosin. So based on the current evidence, our goal should be to stimulate this mechanotransduction process. And we want to stimulate this process in as many muscle cells or muscle fibers as possible. Now, how do we do this? Well, based on Henneman's size principle that was established in 1957, your nervous system recruits muscle fibers and motor units based on effort. So if we want to stimulate mechanotransduction in the most amount of muscle cells as possible, we need to put forth the most effort as possible, so that way we can recruit the most muscle cells as possible and stimulate this process and stimulate the most muscle growth. It is literally that simple. So this is why a high intensity training approach is the best approach to stimulating muscle growth, because higher intensity results in more muscle fiber activation, thereby more mechanotransduction stimulated in more muscle. Therefore, of course, more overall muscle growth. So it appears there is actually more evidence in the literature that supports a higher intensity training approach, and very little evidence that supports a higher volume approach. In most of the studies that support a higher volume approach, more sets, more reps, do not control for intensity of effort. Therefore, they're pretty much useless. Because if intensity of effort is not controlled in a study, any group which had a higher intensity of effort, is going to show more muscle growth. And in the case with the higher volume groups, these groups are actually getting to the point where they fatigue their muscles so much that they're actually trying hard, thereby their nervous system is actually recruiting a lot of muscle and they're stimulating the most growth. So it's nothing about the volume of the groups that are showing the most growth in these studies. It's about the intensity of effort. This is why the majority of those studies are complete utter nonsense. So again, I'm not saying a high volume approach doesn't work. All I'm saying is it is less effective and of course less time efficient. And for the vast majority of individuals, you're going to get to a certain point where you need time efficiency. You're going to have a busy job, a family, other obligations. You can't be spending 6-7 hours a week in the gym for muscle growth. So a high intensity training approach is going to be essential for most people at some point because it's time efficient and of course it's safe. If you want to learn how to do a very effective high intensity training approach, click the link in the description below, join my coaching program, and I will show you exactly how to transform your body with as little as 2 30-minute workouts per week. Click that link in the description. And of course, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I drop more content showing you how to get the best physique that you can get in as little time possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.